So when you had that test at Sebring, were you already living in the U.S. at that point, or were you? Because I guess what I'm ultimately wondering is what was on the line with that test at Sebring. Did you think and did you feel like you were racing for your career right now? Like this was it, this test?
I feel like it was. I think like we were on the way to Europe, right? Like we didn't really have a plan as such.
Okay.
I think for us at that point, I was lucky enough that my parents were cashed out. They had refinanced their home. They'd got to a period when even when I went to Australia in 96, 97 that they couldn't fund anymore, which was when we formed Dixon. I think it was called Dixon Motorsports, which was a group of I think 13 or 14 fellow Kiwis, business people that set up a business to try and pay for or help myself along the ways, which without that it never would have been a possibility.
Explain that a little more, because I saw this in our notes and I was like, wow, this is unusual. I don't see many people carving out their path to a professional race car career, driving career this way.
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain what that was.
It was basically, I think my dad's full of great ideas and I hate to say it, but sometimes the follow through is not perfect. But he has amazing ideas, has his whole life, and I love him for that. And he basically got to the point where he's like, man, I can't fund anymore. We've leaned on all the people that we could for small sponsorships to do Formula Ford and those kind of categories. But to get to the next level, we need to find something else. And it was him and maybe Peter Johnston, another Kiwi, and Craig Harris. They kind of came up with the idea of starting this investment group, which I think it was kind of maybe one of the first of the time, definitely at that point, for motor racing specific, which we've seen, many people go on and use that kind of platform, throughout. But so there was 13 or 14, I would say 95% of those people were all in it for positive reasons. But you're signing away, I don't even know what it was, probably 50% of my future earnings forever. So
Stop. Yes, hold up right there. So when you when your dad creates this business entity, this LLC, you agree at that point that for the rest of your career, 50% of what you win goes to these investors.
Yeah.
Even today.
It was for a lifetime.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the clause was of. It was maybe a period of time, 10, 20 years, something like that. It was basically a lifetime. But at that point, 50% of nothing was 50% of nothing,
I know,
and 50% of something was going to be, where I was going to make some money.
Right. And so at some point, these people are, now benefiting from your success. Is that true?
Yeah. And I was very fortunate that, most of the group were in it for the reasons.
Designed.
Yeah. For the reasons of helping. And they stepped in at the point where, the contracts started to get, a little better. They could see maybe future earnings, and they basically
Potential.
It
did work out for them.
It did,
because this is fascinating. So I want to say, Scott, there may be a couple similar kind of programs for driver too that I could think of in NASCAR, but there's not. I don't think that there's been anything done like this in our industry, and it might be like as old as your model is, it actually might be something that would be doable for some of these guys. When you get enough people that believe, right, to have that opportunity to make an investment and to have that return down the road. I mean, it's so hard to get into racing today. Any avenue is worth searching and seeking out,
especially for pure talent.
Is that kind of a business, an investment model? Was that common in your world, or do you know other drivers? You don't have to name them or not, but that have used that type of strategy?
I think the one I knew mostly was probably Justin Wilson.
Yeah.
I think they'd built a similar product like that later, for his career. Maybe Rossi was something involved in something like that.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, but for me, luckily, there were 2 or 3 fairly big hitters that could kind of control the group of people that stepped in at the point and were like, hey, let's cut this deal now, and you're going to pay back what we've put in. And that's where they stopped it.
Okay.
So, and then the only thing they asked was that with future drivers is that you also help. And
what do you mean?
Put in the investment as well, help younger drivers. I think I was part of Brendan Hartley's, rise up through New Zealand, same with Earl Bamber, a lot of those young Kiwis, it's still, once they had a proven, business plan and they've seen it sort of, go all the way through, they've definitely picked a few, I think, throughout the years to try and that's what's made it really fun for me, is that it's kind of still the same group is still involved and they're still looking at helping these younger kids make it through. Because
is that business still around, that LLC?
Scott Dixon Motorsports, I think, was dissolved.
Oh,
yeah, because it was.
But the group of investors, this group of
the same
this
group.
team is still together, sort of still accomplishing the same goals.
It's dwindled a little bit, but but the same group, and I think we haven't had any projects of late, but I think at some point probably there's another guy that's kind of maybe going to be eligible.
Do
for
you
that.
scout?
It's hard because I don't get back to New Zealand too often.
Yeah, but like even when you're just racing in the U.S., not even for these guys or this investment group, do you personally watch people and go, man, I like that guy's got it. This guy's this driver's got a certain thing that I like, and are you paying attention to young talent?
I think you definitely see it. For us, it's like kind of probably Xfinity or whatever. Right. You get to see, Indy Lights or Indy Next, it's called now. You get to see those, or even Formula Ford 2000. Yeah. Some of those races are some of the best races all weekend, and
so you're watching,
you do for sure. Like I'm a race fan, man.
Yeah.
I love watching racing.
In hindsight, would you do that again? Would you do it this model again to fund your career?
Oh hell,
absolutely. There was no downside.
There was no other way to do it. Well, there is a downside. I mean, look, I'm reading between some lines, and it did seem like it was always seamless. There may be some people in there that are disruptors of some sort. I would assume that's in any business. Like that's common. But you're also giving away a lot of money too at the same time.
Potentially,
once you become a champion.
But then you wouldn't have earned any of the money.
Sure, no, I get it. There's
for
pros
me,
and cons. So
even
you would do it again.
Oh, for sure.
And you would recommend that to anybody, some other young. Well, I mean, you're actually putting your money where your mouth is. Yeah, you still scout.
I think there's no downside, man. Like for me, the passion was for racing. Okay, the money thing becomes a thing later on, just because of a lifestyle that you start to live. But I still tell Chip to this day that he pays me to do all the media stuff, and I race for free, which he hates. But it's it's kind of I see that as the work, and the enjoyment for me is actually driving the car, which unfortunately over the years you just drive less. There's no testing, there's no testing even on race weekends. I think we get like an hour and a half of practice now for a race weekend, which is probably a lot even for Cup, but it's just it's bizarre. I think the first year I did IndyCar, I did 60 days of testing. Now we're limited to like 4.
Yeah. Good heavens.
Yeah.
That's a lot of testing.
Yeah. That's why I have to do sports car stuff, You gotta race.
Hey, if you like that conversation, you ought to listen to the entire podcast, available everywhere you get your podcasts.